Everyone else is worried about what they're doing, not what you're doing. Welcome to Parking Lot Philosophy, the only show where an overcast day means better lighting. I've been thinking about this lately. I remember hearing a long time ago that you shouldn't worry all the time about what other people think because everyone else is already doing that and has no time to worry about you. I think it's kind of recognizing that no, you're not the main character, but also recognizing too that everyone makes mistakes, and most of the time, the people that beat ourselves up the most or care about the mistakes the most are ourselves. And it's something that I tend to struggle with a little bit. This show, I think, is actually the best example. I'm in a car talking to myself. I don't have tinted windshield or anything. I mean, you can see straight in, and people be walking by. And when I was recording the first few episodes, it was really tough. I would say I really a car would go by, and I'd want to wait to start recording. Or I'd see like a person walking by on like a nearby sidewalk, and I'd be like, well, I don't want to start now. Like, that's just weird if I start talking to myself. And then I realized no one cares. And it was probably like the third or fourth episode when I kind of realized this. But there were all these people are walking around, and like I think a car had parked like right next to me. And I kind of just pressed record, and nothing happened. No one looked at me weird. I couldn't even see anyone, whether I wanted to. I was looking, at the camera. And so even if someone did see me and someone did care and was like, wow, what a weirdo, that's probably the maximum they thought. What's the consequence of someone thinking I'm weird? So what? I am weird. It's that simple. In concept, this is weird. I'm talking to you, the audience, in a car. I mean, if I wanted to not be weird, I'd do this like somewhere that matters. And so that's kind of the thing I've been thinking about is, it only matters what you think. And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to say this in like a narcissistic way or anything, but like you're the only person who cares, or like I guess the opposite. I don't need to burst an ego. And that's one of the things I wrote down in my journal, applying this not only to not being nervous or not being embarrassed by things, which is really tough, especially when you do have a massive fumble. But on the flip side too, recognizing that no one cares about the thing you care about, and that's what makes you unique. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. This podcast is very much an example of that. I have a lot of ideas for doing different videos, making different short films. My wife and I have been working on like an animation for a while, like an animated series. All of these things are like pretty crazy ideas. And the thing is, no one else really cares about them. And that's not to say that, these are bad ideas or anything like that. But if I tell my friend, hey, I have this idea, yada, yada, they're not going to go out and make the idea. It's still, at the end of the day, something I'm working on and something that's my idea. And so I'm the person who cares about it. And so part of it is too, like, you can waste time so long and procrastinate and kind of just let these things fester as just ideas. Or you can go out and make it because no one cares until you actually release it onto the world. And I think of this too for so many, like, I have a gaming YouTube channel, and I make videos for it, but I get a lot more ideas than I can make. I have a full-time job. I freelance as a video editor. And then, I play video games. I want to relax. I cannot make a lot of the bigger budget videos that I want to make, but I do have a lot of friends who are full-time YouTubers, and so I'll give them video ideas. And I say friends; they're more like colleagues. I have talked with them briefly, but these people, maybe acquaintances is even better. They do not have the same interest as me, even though similar topics and things like that. They are still not necessarily going to be interested in that random idea I have. And so rarely have I had like a scenario where I pitch an idea to one of them, like, hey, here's this thing, like, I wish I could make it, but I can't. or I wish I could make it, but I don't think it's really for me. I don't think I've ever seen any of them make those videos. Maybe rarely. Like I've suggested an idea and someone will go out and make it. But that being said, it's not that they don't like the idea, or it's not that they don't like me. It's just they have their own things that they care about. They have their own things that are on their priority list. I think there are plenty of ideas out there that are really valid ideas, are great ideas, but you have to be the one to actually go out and make that happen because you're the one who cares about that idea. And it's kind of powerful in a way to recognize that, because in a way it means you kind of have infinite time to actually work on something, because no one else is going to do it. You're the one who cares about it. But at the same time too, it's also motivating to recognize that, hey, nothing happens unless you make it happen. There's a lot of great quotes out there about things like that. There's one, I don't remember who said it, but it's like, if you want your life to change, you have to change. And that's kind of that same thing. Like if you care about something and you want other people to care about it as well, you have to be the one to care about it and care for it. And I think that's, at the heart of what I'm talking about. It is very much, it's just like, hey, it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing, whether it's positive or negative, whether they love your idea or hate it, or they think you're weird, or they think you're normal. At the end of the day, it's all about what you do, and it's about what you're thinking, because that's what truly matters. And I think that's really helpful. I wanna kind of flip. I know we're talking about, very theoretically here as well, but I also want to talk partially career advice and things, because I got very much in my own head when I first started my job about like what other people care about and things like that. I always felt like there's a lot of times in my job, it's not necessarily that I'm not doing anything, but I'm not doing my job necessarily. So I'm really interested in like marketing and strategy and social media, things like that. So a lot of times I'll take on tasks that are very much not in my role or responsibilities, or even further so, I have a lot of time that I just read while I'm at work. And I'll read like Mintel, which is like a market insights company. I'll be reading like articles about higher education. I'll be reading like trends and analysis on Generation Alpha, because they're the target audience right now. They're the incoming prospective students, and a little bit Gen Z. And so that's one of the things. I'm doing a lot of things that are like parallel to my job, but they are not necessarily my job. And so I was worried when I first started that it's like, oh, am I going to get in trouble for this stuff? Is this something? But then you start to realize like, no one cares. Everyone is worried about what they're doing in their job and whether they're the person. Like they're all worried about the same thing I am. They're worried that they're not the person doing enough work. They're worried that this isn't technically what their job is supposed to be. And it was through conversations with my coworkers that I kind of figured this out. I was very worried that, like I wasn't necessarily like, I'm young in an industry that I think a lot of times doesn't necessarily have people my age, but I am also the youngest on our staff. And that's because I graduated as a student and then I became a staff member a few months later. And so that's one of the things I always felt like, not necessarily I had this chip on my shoulder, but I didn't want to be the young, lazy, distracted Gen Z worker. Like I didn't want to fit those stereotypes. So I was always worried what other people think. And then come to find out, no. Like, I mean, talking with my coworkers, number one thing, you should communicate. In any relationship, I mean this as in like the term relationship as like, a conversation with people, or like, connection with people. That's what I'm looking for. Whether it's your work relationships, your friendships, your actual relationships, you should communicate, because you're going to learn a lot more. But through conversations with my coworkers, I kind of learned it's like, oh shit, I'm actually way ahead of the curve. It's great that I'm reading about market research and things, because it's more helpful. And part of it is you don't know what you don't know. And so I didn't realize that all of my coworkers were also worried about not not actually doing enough. I think a great example, I work very closely. One of my coworkers and I were in the same, like, 3-person department. And so sometimes, like, I will cover when they're not necessarily feeling well or things like that, but they're still able to work. It's like, oh, I'm not at full capacity. Can you cover this for me? And I will gladly do that because, I want to be helpful. I want to, make sure I'm pulling my weight. But they're just as worried that they're not pulling their weight every time they ask me. So they're always like, oh, is there any, like, days I can cover for you and things like that? But it's not something I'm worried about. And even though this coworker is very much my senior, they literally have this senior position, it's something where, they are even worried that, they don't want to necessarily, sorry, I have a hangnail and it's really annoying. That's why I'm, like, picking at my finger. But yeah, they don't want to be the slacking worker either. And so it's really interesting when you start to kind of recognize these things, that everyone is, at the end of the day, worried about themselves. They're worried that they're the person that they dislike. They're worried that they're not doing enough. They're worried that their ideas aren't good enough. And so if you can recognize that you do that, because I think most of us do, if you can recognize that, that's a superpower right there. It's not something that's easy. I don't think it is. A lot of this show is about self-reflection. I think if you can do anything, take anything from this show, definitely try your best to self-reflect, because you're going to learn so much about yourself. And even worse, you're going to recognize you do all this self-reflection and then sometimes you're not applying it still, which is half of the reason why I wanted to start doing this, because I have all these ideas, I have all these self-reflections, I notice these things in my journals, and it's not sticking sometimes. So what better way to start my day than yelling at myself, more or less, to make a difference and actually change and make progress. So I want to thank you guys, because this is helpful to me. Yeah, I hope it helps you, but at the end of the day, it is helpful to me. Hence why I care about it, hence why I'm doing it, hence why we talk about why no one else cares about it. You should care about it. Thank you all for watching. Bye for now.